Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm Dan John, and this is the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. Each and every week, I sit down here and I answer your questions. Today is episode 318. It's kind of weird. It just seems like a couple days ago, it was episode 300, and we're already sneaking up on 325. And of course, when I hit there, I'll be talking about episode 350. And when I get there, I'll talk about episode 400. Each and every week, I sit down here and I answer your questions. So you have a question. If you want me to answer it, please send it to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every question. We do get a lot of the same questions over and over. Obviously, they're important. And so I don't mind answering the same question. It would be nice sometimes if someone took the moment aside to look up something themselves, but my job is to answer those questions. Our first question, I actually like. It's a short question. And it's from Leroy. And Leroy says, what is your best advice for someone looking to press the beast? For those of you who have no idea what the beast is the 48 kilo kettlebell. The first time I ever saw one was in San Diego at an RKC. And I didn't realize that this would become famous, but I walked over it, cleaned it, and pressed it the first time I touched it. Now, yeah, aren't I wonderful? Part of the reason I wanted to start that off, Leroy and all my gentle listeners, is that I have a big background in lifting. I've been lifting since 1965. I don't think I've missed lifting 3 days a week since 1965. Oh, a few weeks here, a few weeks there because of surgeries or travel, but I like to lift weights and I do it. Because I've spent so many years with the barbell, I've snatched 142.5 kilos, which is 314 pounds. I've cleaned 182.5, which is 402. I can't reach back to pat myself on the back. But the first thing I want to get clear, Leroy, is that I came into the kettlebell world with a big background in weightlifting. And the number one thing I pick up when I work with people who are moving into kettlebells, especially in the early times of kettlebells. For a lot of the guys I worked with at these kettlebell certifications, the only lifting they had ever done in their life was kettlebells. So for some of them, they had this idea that the 24 kilo bell, the 53, was heavy because it's the most they'd ever lifted. But if you have a standard barbell, you start off at 20 kilos, 44, 45 pounds, and that's what you lift. So even to get your first workout in, you're practically up to 65, 85 pounds, 30, 40 kilos in no time. So now it is obviously, it's also two hands. I understand that. But for a lot of us who came in from the barbell world, we were just used to bigger numbers. So that is the introduction to the answer. For those of you who found the beast easy to press the first time, there's probably a really good chance you had a pretty good sized background. I'm glad you asked the question here. At the San Jose RKC a few years ago with a master present, another senior, Ben Fogel and I were just talking about this months ago. But I picked up the 48 and I pressed it, the beast, 13 times with my right hand. I'm not sure why I did it. I know why I did. I was trying to prove a point. But so the beast for me has never been a challenge. And again, we're still in the introduction here. Because if you have a big background in lifting, the beast isn't going to be that hard to tame, okay? That's where we begin. Now, if this is your goal, I put together a couple ideas for you first. First off, and this is important, point number one, is that this is a kettlebell challenge. And I think you should do it with a 48 kilo kettlebell. I mean, this is so obvious to say out loud, but I think it's important to realize this is a kettlebell challenge and a kettlebell lift. I think your chest should start here. You should have that slight J press that we have in the kettlebell world. And I think it should go pretty much vertical the whole time. Your forearm should remain perpendicular to the floor the whole time. Your glute should be tight. Your quad should be tight. You should have a great foundation. And if you are going to lean away, it's reasonable. I'm a big believer in chin, sternum, and zipper. But in this case, I would say try to keep your nose, your chin, even a broken nose like I have, your nose, chin, and sternum somewhat stacked on each other. Don't completely lean off away. The next thing is, it really does help to come in with a big barbell press. For those of you who can bench press 100 kilos, that is basically, it's twice as much as the 48. If you can military 100 kilos, then I think you should be able to press the 48. But having a barbell background with those heavier lifts will help with the biggest issue most people have when they do the beast press, is when you clean that bell for the first time. If you haven't got a big background in lifting, 48 kilos feels heavy. Now, if you deadlifted 300 kilos, cleaning 48 still might feel heavy, but your brain will instantly say, yeah, it's not that heavy, okay? The second thing I want to think about is, don't try to have a formula on this. In other words, throw out percents, throw out all that other stuff. Don't make up some fancy formula, because if you're going to press the beast, it's going to be pressing 48 kilos. I know that's obvious, but you can't, and in my new, in the armor building formula, the new one that's coming out, I have all these projected maxes that I like to include, because people ask the question all the time. But I'm not a fan of projected maxes when it comes to something specific like this. In other words, don't press the 32, for 28 reps and say that's the same as pressing that beast. Though if you can press that for 28 reps, you're a pretty place. I recommend 4 workouts a week for people who are trying to do this. The first one, and how you work on what days, I'm just going to give you the order I would usually do this. But if you have to change your schedule, you're going to have a high volume day, and you're going to have one high intensity day, one practice day, and then one doubles day. How that works is up to you. But, and I have some notes I'm looking at down here. On the volume day, I still think you do a set of 2 reps with the load. You put the weight down. I can't believe I have to tell people to put the weight down, but some kettlebellers don't know when you're doing volume, it's okay to put the weight down occasionally. How do you do high rep swings without putting the weight down? Okay, I'll stop. So you'll do 1, 2, put the weight down, and then you'll do a set of 3, put the weight down, do a set of 5, put the weight down, do a set of 10. And I like doing that for a total of 5 rounds. Now, if you're going left hand, right hand, which I think is a good idea to keep that symmetry, it's going to take you a while to get those 100 reps, because it's a total of 200. But you would go 1, 2, switch, 1, 2, rest, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, 5, 10, 10. Longer rest, shake it out, and then come back. You could certainly, over a 6-week period, start off, week 1, you do a set of 3, maybe week 2, a set of, so 3 rounds of that, 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5. The second week, 4 rounds of that. Drop back week 3 to do 3 rounds. And then from there, see if you can hit that 5 rounds, or just stick with 4 rounds again, and nudge up your volume week by week up to the total 100 reps. It is a long workout. It'll take a while. Though I'll tell you this, if you were to do that high volume, 100 reps left, 100 reps right, I think you would look good in the mirror. I have spent way too much time in the weight room, and I got to tell you, single arm overhead presses do wonders for how you look on the beach and in a tuxedo. The next day would be the heavy day. Now, you're going to have to work 2 ways on this. One, I like the idea of you kind of getting in the gym on the second day workout and just test yourself up. If right now you're pressing the 36, so maybe a couple of singles, in a perfect world, 16, 24, 28, 32, and then you try the 36. After you kind of get a sense of where you are, pick a load. Now, if the 36 shot up, but you can't do the 40, stick with the 36. And what I want you to do is add a little legs so it pops up, and then come down slowly. You're going to pull the weight down, make sure that shoulder's protected, and then squeeze it in here, add the legs, pop it up, pull it down. 1, 2, or 3 reps in the push press are all you're going to need. And I'd like you still to do both sides on that. And the reason I don't want you to go high rep, I want you to focus more on that slow down concentric. I want you to focus more on that slow. And what you might find on a day is that all of a sudden you're going to find that, oh, right here is where I'm weak. And if you, as you find that weak spot, that dead spot, try to really slow down even more in there. And over time, you'll kind of get some mastery on what to do. The third day is a relatively light day. What I want you to do on this day, I use those big Dynamax bands. You can hook them to a post. You can hook them to a squat rack. I can hook them to a couple kettlebells, I imagine, if they're heavy enough. And what I'm going to do on the presses that day, I'm going to take that band in my offhand, and as I'm doing some light presses, I'm going to play around with different locations on the light band. What I'm trying to teach myself, it's called irradiation forever, but we don't hear the word as much as we did, say, 23, 24 years ago. But what I want you to do, maybe on one light press, and if you're pressing the 36, you could just use the 20 or even the 16 on this. It's just a drill. So you do a rep here, and then maybe you pull it all the way into the chest and do a rep, and then maybe you slide it straight down, into a suitcase carry position and do a rep. 2, 3, 4, 5 reps of holding the fighting that Dynamax band opposite you. The green and the blues would be pretty hard to do. I got to be careful with the colors because I might be using older colors, but there's one right underneath it. It's in my gym is kind of purplish, though I could be wrong. My sense of color isn't very good. Sometimes I'll look at purple and someone will say that's actually violet, and I'm like, I can't even tell the difference. But doing this on both sides, you could probably do it if you're doing, just a couple of reps. This is a practice day where you're actually teaching the offside of the body to learn how to do the work. When you get to the beast, you're going to have to lift with your whole body. Both legs, your whole torso, and your offside have all got to be ready to go. The fourth workout of the week would be the doubles day. And I would recommend, at least for most people I work with, is what I call the touchdown press. That's when you start with both kettlebells over your head. You bring one down, you press it back up. You bring the other down and you press it back up. What you'll notice when you're doing this fourth day, the touchdown press day, this is the day where everything starts to link together. The other 3 days, there's volume. The intensity is because you're holding the weights overhead and you're also teaching the offside lift. I wouldn't imagine doing more than 12 to 20 total reps is what you need. So, that could be 5 sets of 4, but you got to remember, this is a set. This is a single. 1, 1. So that's 1, 2, 2. So it does take a while on touchdown presses to get a set of 4. A set of 5 takes a long time. You'll probably find somewhere around 3s to be best. So, you're looking at 4 to 6 sets of 3 or something like that, maybe a little bit more. And then that's it. I would say after about 6 weeks of doing this, 4 days a week, I would skip maybe Monday. I would skip the volume day, the push press day, and the offside day. Shake your arms off each day, do whatever else you want. And then on that fourth workout, I'd like you to take a run again, if you have enough kettlebells, and just test your max again. Start off whatever you think is appropriate. You can go 12, 16, 20 if you need all the warm-ups, 24, 28, 32, 36, 40, and then you get to 44. Now you were doing 36, so if you get the 40, good for you, stay on the program. If you get the 44, yay for you, you're doing great. And then try the 48. Just get a sense of, if you make it, hey, we're donezo. Leroy, you finished it. We're good. If you miss it, go back and repeat the program because you're doing the right thing. How long does it take to press the beast? Either the first time you ever see it, or, from the feedback I've got from the RKC2 on both the men and the women's side, somewhere around 3 to 6 months is what's needed if you're going from, really a beginner to a little bit more established. It takes up to 3 to 6 months to get enough practice in that you can crush the beast under pressure at a certification. I hope that helps. I think it's a good goal. Of all the things I read sometimes, this is a good, solid goal. So I like it a lot, my friend. Okay, thank you, Leroy. I hope that helped. If anyone has the urge to type up that whole thing I just said and put it in the show notes, I'd really appreciate it, because I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Great. We have a question from Kip, and this is an interesting one. It slides over into medical advice, but there's a thing he says here that I want to discuss. Kip says this: I'm a consistent runner that has recently picked up a couple of 16-kilo kettlebells to start the armor building formula. Then he says, I've had multiple lower back blowouts with sciatica in my life, but I've had about 10 years incident free. Still, I live in fear of how it entirely shuts down your life if you cross that threshold. My first thought is, if you have back issues now this is not anything I know, but this is what I've been told, then long distance running, especially on asphalt pavement like we have here in beautiful Murray, I think that's going to be as hard on your back as anything I do in the weight room. But that's just my point, and I could be wrong. I'm a big acolyte of my good friend Stuart McGill, and I've even seen some McGill method people here in Montreal to come up with some workouts. I wish you to mention, Kip, earlier that you're from Montreal, one of my favorite towns in the entire world. Wonderful place. The thing is, I love the idea of the ABC, but the swing involved in the clean has left my lower back nice and sore the next day each time. It feels better after good sleep, but I still don't want to risk it. In the words of McGill, I'm concerned about the shear of my lower back from the cleans. I know it could be bad form. So we get to here where all of a sudden you say, I know it could be bad form. So are you blaming the armor building complex for your back injuries? Or more correctly, do you need to clean up your clean? I like that sentence. So, I visit Montreal a lot. There's a nice rooftop bar near the place I always stay. You could bring your kettlebells up there. I could sip martinis and listen to Gino Vanelli. And if you don't know who he is, are you really from Montreal? But watch you do your armor building complex and coach you, or you can, you're already seeing people with the McGill method. Why don't you maybe invest in a qualified coach to help you with your clean technique? I wanted to stop right there, folks, because it's such an important point. If you're doing an exercise wrong and it's hurting you, why are we still blaming the exercise in this day and age? It's your technique. So let's get your technique cleaned up before we come to your question. Now the question. I've been substituting the two cleans for 2 kettlebell deadlifts followed by a curl. What do you think? Do I need to work on my form? Yes, you do. With the swing and the curl, or is this a decent substitute? If not, do you have any ideas? Well, first off, I think double kettlebell cleans, double kettlebell swings are much better for someone who has back injuries. In fact, to the point as I don't think we ever have anybody do single arm swings in my gym. It's just, even with, just about everybody in my gym who trains regularly is kettlebell certified and original strength certified. And yet you'll never see us because it is really hard to maintain that chin, sternum, zipper alignment the whole time you're doing single arm. People start to turn and rotate. And with your back injuries, you're one rep from a nightmare. So first off, make sure you're focusing on the armor building complex with double kettlebells. And I guess the biggest thing, you went to a McGill certified coach, but why aren't you going to a kettlebell coach? And finally, one small thing. If you're doing curls with a kettlebell, one of the things, and this will sound weird, but in my experience, a lot of people hurt their lower backs doing curls because, when the curl gets to about here, it puts tremendous stress. In fact, one of my favorite abdominal exercises is called goblet squat with the heartbeat. You sit at the bottom of the goblet squat, and then you punch and return the kettlebell heartbeat, boom, 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 in the deep squat position. And one of the things people suddenly realize is how much the abdominal wall and the entire family of pelvic floor and all the musculature around this part of the body all instantly have to respond to that boom. So if you're doing 2 deadlifts and a curl, my biggest concern is, are you making sure you have a good position? I just don't. There's a certain lack of beauty to the deadlift followed by the curl. But if it's what you're going to do, it's what you're going to do. But let's get a coach. Let's get someone looking at you. Very often, coaches can prevent lots and lots of injuries and long-term problems. If you're into collision sports, when someone has a good form tackle, everyone hits the ground at once and nobody gets hurt. It's when someone sticks their head in, which is not only a poor way to tackle, but it could really injure both you and the running back or whatever sport it is. In the discus, you'll find that beautiful technique is painless technique. I break up my coaching into 2 sections a year in the throws. The first section is fit goes far, and the second one is smooth goes far. And smooth technique doesn't hurt. It's a very rare sport where smooth, healthy technique hurts. I have to think about it, but whenever you talk to somebody who hurts their elbow or shoulder in the javelin throw, it was a one-off throw that went badly somewhere. Most sports, when someone gets hurt, very often you can circle it and say, it was right here. So for me, I'd sure like to see you improve your technique and then get back to me and tell me what you learned. Thank you. We have a question from Andrew. Andrew says, you have mentioned a few times working with the Utah Jazz. Yes, I did. And recently mentioned John Stockton on the podcast. I would love to hear any stories you have about working with them or anything about players and coaches. That was such an interesting team. Yes, it was. Mark Eaton, Walter, a few others that I knew. Walter Palmer was just so fun to work with. Alan Bannister, not as well known. Karl Malone was far bigger than you think. Just a broad guy. And then he wants to ask a question about basketball. Let's talk about John first. I first met John. I was on a date, so this will be the year he was drafted, and he and his wife were at this function. And even then, I already realized that I kind of felt bad for him. People kept coming up to him, and I mean, people would even say kind of rude things. Yeah, you picked a terrible team to come for, and just walk away. And it was the first time I ever got a sense of why celebrities can really be turned off by people. I was on a date, like I said, so this is a while ago, but I just remember being kind of ooh. And then a couple of years later, he and Mark and Walt and Alan and the big tall kid from Arizona State all started training at the Upper Limit Gym, actually here in Murray, not that far away from where I live now, which is kind of a funny thing to think about. And the first thing you noticed when you met him was that his hands were freakishly big. I got to tell you, if you're looking for a basketball prospect, don't just measure their height, measure their hands. His hands, there are some pictures of him dribbling a basketball. I swear he could dribble and palm it on every single one. His hands were massive. The other thing, and I've told this story many times to high school kids who want to be basketball players. In between his sets of lifts, and he really only lifted 2 exercises. And anybody who's ever been into a gym knows the 2 he liked, bench press. But between every set, he would come up, walk over to the counter, and he would do the Salt Lake Tribune's crossword. And it was kind of funny because I used to do the crossword and Walt Palmer used to do the crossword. So I do remember one time having this kind of funny little conversation about how we all felt that the crossword puzzle maker had cheated us. It was like it was a word that fit. It was like a 7-letter word, but 2 answers fit perfectly. And then, of course, so everyone's crossword puzzle had lots of scribbles that day. I just remember that being fun. There's a lesson there, and the lesson is he liked to focus and concentrate. When he was lifting, he was lifting like he was lifting. And when he was done lifting, he concentrated on the crossword puzzle. He was crossword puzzling. And I've always tried to get across the point is that when I'm around elite athletes, they don't talk about their dates on the weekend or the new Mario Kart game or, they are there. Now you might say, well, crossword puzzles. Well, I used to read Bobby Fischer's the book on his book on teaching chess, and I used to between sets do a chess puzzle. Do I have enough to checkmate? Yes, I do. No, I don't. And then turn the page and find out I was wrong or I was right. But I like that. And in fact, many of you may remember me at weightlifting meets sitting in the stands doing chess puzzles, because for me, chess puzzles kept me weirdly focused on the task at hand and not focused with all the other nonsense going around. Interesting that most of the basketball, especially the boys, never took any of my advice. And I remember giving them this lecture, and 5 minutes later, they were all doing that thing where they all just bounce balls up and down with their dominant hand and just talk about parties they were at. I thought that lesson didn't stick. I was working with a young man. He goes up to a school over here, and the coach cut him because he was a one-handed basketball player. He only played with his right hand. I said, well, how much do you practice on your left since he told you that? He said, not at all. I thought, horse, water, drink, as my good friend Ben Tuma always says. Now to your question, Andrew. Also, I'd like to hear your suggestions for training to complement basketball. I'm 36 years old, 5'9", and you rode 176 kilograms. I'm guessing that's 176 pounds because at 176K, I'm not sure at 5'9", you'd be in great shape. Not the best build for basketball, but I still love the game. It's just hard to justify the injury risk. Nothing too serious yet, but fractured nose last year, lots of general aches and pains in the joints, and time it takes me to recover after playing. I've mostly decided to focus on my other goals, increasing strength and muscle mass, maintaining running and sprinting ability. Well, what I would recommend, and I just invented this for you, is easy strength for basketball. What I would recommend is 5 days a week, Andrew, you do 2 sets of 5 in the press, some kind of pulling motion, a chin-up, a deadlift variation, 2 sets of 5, ab wheel, and something else. In your case, for jumping, I think the hip thrust would be a really good idea. With the ab wheel, stick to 1 set of 10. With the hip thrust, 3 sets of 25, really get the butt cheeks going. And then the press, whatever variation you find is fine. The pull, rows, pull-ups, chin-ups, lat pulls, whatever is fine. And then the deadlifts, keep them in that. 2 sets of 5. Do this 5 days a week. And after you do that, work on the parts of your game that aren't any good. If you're going to go for a walk, which I really recommend, bring a basketball with you. And as you're walking, practice dribbling. Crossover behind the back between the legs. A 20-minute basketball dribbling walk probably be a ton of stimulus to your brain and a good way to get yourself to get all the benefits of easy strength for fat loss. If you can only do it 3 days a week, do it 3 days a week. And then you talk also about sprinting and running and all the rest. At 36, the weight room and staying healthy has become more important to you. So I'd really like you to stick with that a little while. Okay, thank you. Neil has a good question. Front squats feel so much more natural for me than back squats. I have long legs. That's really interesting. Back squats feel like a constant fight not to turn it into a good morning. Yeah, and following up on the question we just had about basketball players, watching a 7'4" professional basketball player squat, it just takes so long. Years ago, my daughter Lindsay and I went on a whale watching cruise, and we saw a blue whale. And what amazed me about the blue whale, and this is going to sound so silly, but it was so big. I mean, okay, obviously the largest creature ever inhabit the planet, but it was so much bigger than you would think. As it just kept going over and over and over and over and over and over. Then this little fin showed up over and over and over, and then the flukes showed up, and I was like, damn, that's big. When you're watching an NBA guy squat, you realize why powerlifters and Olympic lifters want to be about this tall and they're made to squat and Olympic lift. NBA players are not. So I agree with you. I like that idea. Also, I get a bit scared under a heavy back squat, but not a front squat. Basically, Neil tells us, I don't like back squats. And Neil, I got to tell you, in my experience, outside of building mass, especially for teenagers and young 20-year-old men, back squats just really seem to suffer to help performance. Of course, I really do believe in high rep back squats in a mass building program if you need to build mass. But other than that, man, front squats, it's a much more athletic position. Like you said, the loads are a lot more reasonable. And the other thing with a front squat, most of us, it's like in the kettlebell world. Everyone knows that a clean finishes here. Everyone knows that a snatch finishes here. But go online, you'll see that the swing has about 1,000 variation of what a swing should look like. So let's continue. Can I build a big front squat and big quads by only front squatting? Well, it sure worked for me back in the 70s. My thighs were stupid big. At Utah State, I used to wear short shorts. And every so often, someone will make a little critique, oh, you wore short shorts. And I always be like, if you had legs like that, you'd show them off too. So, or is doing some back squatting necessary to build the front squat and big quads too? I think you answered your own questions here, Neil. If you want more mass, high rep back squats. Other than that, front squats are practically all what most people need. If you're a kettlebeller, goblet squats and double kettlebell front squats are the secret to success. In the barbell world, I'd much rather see you do front squats than back squats. When I look over at some of my older books, the pre-squat rack period, Miles Callum recommends doing back squats on your toes. Bosco recommends with his squats, you just don't see that, of course, with Bosco, but the reps very high. Squatting kind of showed up in the 70s as the answer to all problems. And when you start to go down a certain belief like that, you sometimes toss the baby away with the bathwater when it comes to all the other exercises like the front squat and the overhead squat. One thing I know about the overhead squat, if you can overhead squat 315, I guarantee you can back squat it. If you can back squat 315, you might not be able to overhead squat a broomstick. So with the overhead squat and the front squat, you get those secret benefits of flexibility and mobility work that you don't just with the back squat. I hope that helped. Very specific question, and that's what I answered. Thank you. Okay, this is a longer question. This is from Kieran, and he says, I'm a 19-year-old from Northern Ireland. I love Northern Ireland. My family's from just north of Belfast. I'm about 5'10" and around 150 pounds. I recently took up running with my university club, and now I've done one marathon and a few half marathons. My goal is simple. I want to get as fast as I possibly can in all races from the 5K to the marathon. Waiting until 19 might not have been a great idea, but let's help you out. Right now, I average about 30 to 40 miles a week with a mix of workouts. Through fields and in nature, the idea is to make them as cool and as fun as possible. My current personal bests are just under 130 for the half and sub 19 for the 5K. Before lifting, I played rugby and lifted with the team, so I have a decent base with front squats, deadlifts, and power cleans. I also used to climb a bit and can still crank out about 20 pull-ups. So Kieran, I think your weightlifting is set. I think you're in a good place. My concern is your volume of running. I don't think you run enough. Here's where I need your help. I'd love a 2-day-a-week strength plan that makes me strong, not just for running, but for life. I'm not chasing huge lifts or mirror muscles, but I do care a bit about looking like I train. See, you're having goals collisions here. If you want to improve your running, but you also want to get more muscle, carrying those ponderous pecs and Dora-wide deltoids and terrorizing triceps is going to hold back your running. But I'm going to help you because, so if there's room for a little hypertrophy of isolation work, I'd welcome that too. The main reason I say 2 days is I don't love the gym environment, but I respect the value of the work and I want a plan to commit to it. It's interesting. I was down in Australia and my friend Andrew Gunn just finished writing a biography of Percy Sarday, who really, I have, the book is right there, Train with Sarday. And then, back in here, I've got Be Fit and Be Damned and his athletics book. Percy Sarday, he really did change my career when I first read about him in the Track and Field Army book when it came out in 1971. When I got Meyer's book, Training with Sarday? Yeah, Training with Sarday. I was amazed to see how much he said back in the day turned out to be what is now just given. He really did push several exercises. Bench press, power curl, which is a curl grip power clean, deadlift variation, hanging and doing pull-ups from a high bar, and sit-ups. And I got to tell you, there's the program you should be on. Since you already power clean and deadlift and you know how to squat, you probably don't need squatting. I'd much prefer you keep on these nature runs. Just really find some hills and learn how to attack the hills. I know you got some big hills out there in Northern Ireland because the Giants made them, according to the tour guide. My thought is you might want to try something I call 2-3-5. And 2-3-5 is a very simple system where it's 2 days a week, 3 days a week, or 5 days a week. It's 2 exercises, 3 exercises, or 5 exercises. It's 5 reps, 2 reps, 3 reps, or 5 reps. It's 2 sets, 3 sets, or 5 sets. If you just pick, if you lift twice a week, I would suggest you probably do more exercises. So pick 5, and let's have you do, deadlift, power curl, a press, bench, or military. You're doing the pull-ups, and then do some kind of ab work. And do those 5 exercises, and then either do 3 sets of 3, 3 sets of 5, or 5 sets of 5. And there you go. I don't know if I can give you a better program for a runner than to do that. The other issue is you're going to have to start getting more mileage. You should be running twice a day. If you really, you want to get as fast as possible, you're going to have to put in more miles. Now, long term, you probably you won't have to have this kind of mileage. But for now, you're going to need a morning run. And then I would strongly recommend that right after you do those 2-day week weight workouts, get another run. So probably a vigorous run in the morning. My college friend Taro Livingsmoon, he got up every day and ran 5 to 7 miles every single day of the year, no matter what. And then had practice at 1:30 in the afternoon. And sometimes would run in the evening after that if he felt he wasn't making progress. If you want to be a serious runner, you got to run, because sprinters sprint, runners run, throwers throw, and jumpers jump. Try that 2-3-5 protocol and get back to me, okay? Thanks. We got a question from Dave. You recently mentioned that this year you tied your lifetime best chin-up pull-up record. Congratulations. This is amazing. Now, the upside of that is I've never been very good at it. So when I got 14, what was that, 2 months ago? I was pretty happy with it. We'll continue. I'm a 55-year-old male and have been lifting regularly for years. While I was still able to hit my lifetime best chin-up record at age 47, good job, MAPS, middle-aged pull-up syndrome, right there in the elbow, ultimately caught up to me. So much so that a few years back, I completely eliminated chin-ups and pull-ups from my workouts. I figure those days were over and I'd never be able to be proficient at them again. However, your achievement gives me hope this may not be the case. Can you talk about how you were able to get your goal? And how do I tend to deal with MAPS? Well, guess what? MAPS showed up on me. So middle-aged pull-up syndrome. Fortunately, I went down for a couple of weeks down to Australia, and I got good advice from my coach. My coach's name is Scott, and he's very good. He said, during this time, I want you to walk, keep an eye on your calories, no lifting. And no lifting for about 3 weeks really seemed to help me. So should you do pull-ups? Well, I do chin-ups because that's within the program. And that's what my coaches have me do. I realized a couple of weeks ago that really was hurting my elbows more was that I can curl a lot of weight. About just before I left for Australia, I got up to 155 for 8 curls. Now, I mean, obviously all those years of Olympic lifting probably gives me a little extra power there, but what I notice is when I drop the weight down, I got that the bar reconnected with my hands when it bounced. And when it hit, I really felt my elbow, that little tendon or whatever it is, just get angry at me. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm probably going to increase the reps on my curls and back off on that terrible amount of strain that each and every rep has. Do you need to do chin-ups? No, not if they're hurting you. Do you need to do pull-ups? No, not if you're hurting you. So this is me leaving for Australia saying, before I left my trip, I don't know what I'm going to do. Then I go down to Piers Kwan's gym there in Brisbane. It's called Queensland Kettlebell. And if you live in the area, why are you not training there? And he had these 2 pieces of equipment that I actually have in my gym right now. The first off with this little, it's a very small thing. It's a little hook like this, and it's got a grip. It looks kind of like a J, but the ends hook onto a typical pull-up bar. And it allows me to use a pull-up position neutral like this. But it was the other one that really got me happy. This, instead of being straight, there was an angle. So if I jump up and hold it this way, I can hold it with my hands. I don't even know what position that is, but they're V-ish, but in. But then I also noticed, is that I could jump on the other side and do a chin up instead of having my elbows here or here. I could have them here. And I did a couple pull-ups. I shouldn't have. I did a couple chin-up pull-ups, whatever you want to call that position. And it didn't hurt my elbows. So here's a thought for all of you listening who want to keep chinning and pulling. So there's 3 basic positions. There's the chin-up grip, the pull-up grip, and the neutral or parallel grip. Some gyms have that weird little thing that allows more grips. I would suggest if you're going to do chin-ups, pull-ups, that you do your best to alternate your grips as you go. When I got up to the 24 kilo added weight and I got some really good reps in, yay for me. But I also noticed that the next day, because I had been doing everything in this grip, that's when it first manifested itself into pain. So the answer, as always, with middle-aged pull-up syndrome is, take 6 months off and then never hurt it again. That's a great answer, but my program calls for chin-ups, and it seems to really help me with my body composition. I wish I could find one more way to do this, but I can't. But if you can find these grips, I don't know where you got them, and I think sometimes it's important for all of you to do the intellectual work of finding these things, but I found that these additional pull-up grips to be really helpful in my own case. Your mileage may vary. I'm doing my best here. Thank you. The very simple question. Jared asks, you mentioned that you give blood on a regular basis. Yeah, 5 times a year. How do you fit that in with training? Do you have any recommendations other than opting into a cookie coma after donating? So Jared, I go with the American Red Cross. It's probably a 2,000 step walk from here. It's very close. It's right there. So what I do is I always schedule mine for Sunday morning. I think they open at 8 o'clock on Sunday mornings. I go fasted and I walk over. Of course, I don't usually eat until 10:30 or 11 o'clock every day. So, usually I get the appointments at 9:15 or 9:30. But what's nice is I walk over, I go through all the paperwork, which just seems to get worse every time. And I donate blood. I drink a couple of extra waters while I'm there. They have something called Lorna Doones. That's the only reason I actually donate blood. It's not to help other people. I get Lorna Doones out of this. And I don't know what it is about Lorna Doones, but I like them, okay? And by the time I walk home, I'm ready for the rest of my Sunday stuff. I can eat brunch. I can go to my daughter's. I can go do all those other activities one could do on a Sunday. But my blood donation is behind me. It gives me almost 24 hours of recovery for my next workout. And honestly, being down that small amount of blood just doesn't have a huge impact on me. So one thing I would recommend, folks, if you're going to donate blood, try to find an off day, maybe 24 hours before your next workout. Obviously, if you could do it on Saturday morning, you don't train on Saturday, that gives you an additional 48, and that's great. Donating blood is just really good, especially for the males who are listening. It's really good for your heart health, brings your hematocrit levels down, which some argue that blood iron is really hard on your heart health. I don't know if that's true or not, but my blood profiles are pretty good. And I do think that donating blood is a reason why I've been making such good progress in my blood profiles. So thank you. Easy question. Jim asked a question, and it seems like we're coming to another one, a very similar question again. Jim says, I am 41 years old, 5'10", 190, busy life with night shifts, day shifts, 3 kids. You are busy. I like to run or swim daily and then do weights most days. Doing weights before running and swimming has advantages, but I enjoy much more doing weights after, okay? I separate weights into upper and lower body movements, overhead press, pull-ups, front squats, glute bridges being my main ones lately. Can you talk about, for example, doing them all one day, then rest from them next day, or splitting them into upper and lower days, or whatever you think might be most important to comment on? It's funny because you do practically everything opposite of what I would advise. There is an advantage so you're 41, you're post, you're after your 30s, you got the kids, you got the busy schedule. You seem to find something that works. I would say before age 35, I'm a big fan of whole body workouts. So you do everything every day, 3 days a week. But you'll find, especially with a busy life, that if you're going to do this, there is some value to doing an upper body, lower body. Just spitballing, but I think it would be a good idea to do your run before your upper body and your swim before your lower body, just so that I don't necessarily believe that muscles have to be fresh, but it makes sense in the bigger scheme of things. Swimming is very upper body, so do your lower body after. Running is very lower body, do your upper body after. There's a rhyme to that makes sense to me. If you're going to do run, then whole body, total rest, swim, then whole body, total rest, run, then whole body, total rest, I think there's great value to it. And I'll go back to the opening sentence you said. You have a busy life with night shifts, day shifts, and 3 kids. Days off are wildly underappreciated for those of us who have kids in the house who need help. Days off means it's off. So that's really helped me with my training in the last, especially the last 9 months or so, is I lift weights 3 days a week. And the days I don't lift weights, I do original strength, or I walk more, or I mow the lawn. But I don't ever feel like I'm being, oh gosh, I got to get in the gym. So I think there's real value, Jim, for someone with a busy life and 3 kids to do this whole thing idea. And good luck to you. And I would just stick with those exercises you mentioned. As a reminder, overhead press, pull-ups, front squats, and glute bridges. I like that. I like that a lot. And there's a lot of ways you can attack those exercises, high reps on the glute bridges. Probably a total of 25 to 30 front squats, push-ups, and overhead presses in a workout, 3 sets of 8, 5 sets of 5, whatever it is. And you're going to have yourself a good program. Thank you. That's a good question. Appreciate it. My name is Jonathan. I've been implementing the strategies that you talk about on your podcast for the past year, such as walking more, drinking water, eating my fruits and vegetables, sleeping within going to sleep within the first 2 hours of sundown, flossing, and overhead pressing. Yeah, all secrets, yeah. These habits have assisted me in dropping my body fat percentage from 26 to 18%. That's not bad, Jonathan. That's impressive. That is life-changing numbers there, with the goal of being able to get down to 13%. Good. These habits were so simple, I was shocked when I was making progress because I wasn't killing myself in the gym, but only doing all fundamental movements you talk about. Push, pull, and carry. I just love this. My question is, if it's so simple to make progress towards a health goal, doing basic things, why is it so hard for most people to do? You're not talking about chopping off your arm, but just walking more and eating a piece of broccoli at dinner. I would love to hear your thoughts, and thank you for allowing me to send the question in. I have this thing called the inner circle, and the first thing I tell everybody is that everybody in the inner circle is the 1 of 20 of the 1 in 20 of the 1 in 20. When I first got back from the Middle East, I was really sick. Yeah. And I went to the library and I got some audio tapes, and I bought audio tapes. There were these little plastic things like this, and reel-to-reel ones. And I got Earl Nightingale's Lead the Field, and it's available on YouTube now. Earl's not been with us for a while. And I got to change. From the heart, I've never had something change my life up here as much as that Lead the Field 12-tape series. In fact, when I've made the 3 biggest decisions in my life, I listen to the 12th tape every single time to help me, which is either high praise or I don't listen the first time. But one of the things he said is that, in every field, it's really easy to get into the top 5%, the 1 in 20. The fact that you floss puts you in the top 5%. Ask your dentist or your dental hygienist. They'll tell you, maybe, it's always the same number, maybe 1 in 20 people. People who support public television, they might watch it all day long, but actually support are 1 in 20 of the viewers. In my experience, people and this is an interesting statistic, I got to find it again to make sure it's true, but 1 in 20 Americans retire with enough that they don't actually need public assistance, Social Security. Wow. How did you not know you were going to retire? I mean, how did this suddenly sneak up on you somehow, In my experience, when I go to gyms, about 1 in 20 people train correctly. But basically, I remember Tom Plummer talking about how few Americans have gym memberships. And my thought is, not only that, how few Americans actually exercise. If you're at a party with people and you just ask, do you exercise? Every single one of them will say, yes, I do. But the proof is in the pudding, or lack of eating the pudding, I guess. And when you say, what do you do? It's like when I'm at a party, because of my theology background, people say, oh, I'm spiritual. And what do you mean by that? And literally they read their horoscope every day. And that's, or it gets sent to them on a email thing. Getting people to do anything in life is hard. I started to pick up on this when I was a young teacher and watching high school seniors here in America have to choose a college. And of course, watching my own daughters go through it was also helped me a lot. Of course, I picked Utah State as a 9th grader when I was 13. Of course, I had to get better to throw the discus for Utah State, but I knew where I was going from a young age. But, I used to joke at one school I used to teach at. Freshman year, every kid thinks they're going to Stanford or Harvard, or check that, Harvard or Yale. Sophomore year, it's Stanford or Cal. Junior year, it's University of Utah or maybe Utah State. Senior year, it's Wendy's or McDonald's, because the GPA, okay. Ha ha ha. It was funny to me. It is so hard. I mean, I remember Coach Mon telling us, if you want good grades in school, just go to class. And he was right. You can get a B average at almost any university just by going to class every day. It's obviously you're smart enough to be at the place. So, if you just pay attention, the professor is going to tell you everything you need to know. But when you're around freshmen, and how many of them get drunk and stoned every night, miss class every single day of the week, and, fail out, it stuns me. I know a person who went to Arizona State, got $47,000 in debt, which is not bad for a freshman, and had a 0.00 GPA, which is not good. How do you become one of the 1 in 20? I would recommend, if you're interested in changing your life, go on YouTube, find Lead the Field, and listen. I have copious notes. My notes are so thick that I've had my interns and friends ask me for my notes on those. And it's kind of funny because you'll see my notes. There's blue pens, red pens, green pens, black pens. There's pencil marks. You can tell these different kinds of black pens because I've listened and listened and listened. Success leaves tracks. You obviously are doing a great job, Jonathan, and it's really great to read how you've just changed your life. And to go from 26 to 13% body fat as you will is inspiring. You also wrote a note. You also wrote you had to go to your email box, type in podcast@danjohnuniversity.com and ask this question. You're in rare air, my friend. Not a lot of people ask questions on podcasts. Just go to workshops. Not a lot of people go to workshops. Not a lot of people follow up on anything. So that's why. For most of my life, I always try to get the 19 out of 20 to become the 1 out of 20. I just don't have the time left in my life at the ripe old age of 68 to change every single person on the planet Earth's life. So I decided a while ago, I'm only going to change 1 in 20 people's lives on the planet. I joke a little bit, but it's true. This is a great podcast question. And it's nice to hear a question that doesn't include the usual suspects. But for those of you who missed, let's review how Jonathan got his body fat down. Walking more, drinking water, eating fruits and vegetables, going to bed within 2 hours of sundown, flossing and overhead pressing. He also does pulls and carries too. But man, if that's all you did, folks, your life would change. Jonathan, I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Well, there you go, folks. That's it for this week. That was episode 318. Now, remember, if you have a question, you're going to send it to the podcast here at podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. And until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning and being that 1 in 20 person. Thank you.